You so much, Anna. It's just been such a fantastic event so far. It's brilliant to hear all the different speakers in the chat as well, just for inspiring me and keeping me going and for us to all keep fighting. I just wanted to start, for those of you that haven't heard of it, to talk a little bit about Strike Map, which is one of the sponsors of today's event. They've been building and supporting industrial action over the last few years in the UK, set up in 2020, and it's a digital map of industrial action that's taking place. I believe part of its success is that it's powered and grown directly by the workers. And as we've heard frequently already in this meeting, the change must begin with the workers. It's united reps across different sectors, enabling them to build networks and create strike clubs. It's mapped 230,000 strikes so far and signed up over 4,000 people to visit their nearest picket lines. I've used it a number of times to get to RMT and BMA picket lines. With over 100 affiliates, it's raised thousands for strike funds, which are so necessary for those of us taking industrial action. It enables others to see different actions taking place and to pass on messages of solidarity. And this in turn encourages other workers in their struggles. They see that they're not alone in their unrest. And as we know, building and networking is essential, and Strike Map brings those leading struggles together through the network. So why is it that organisations like Strike Map are so needed at the moment in the UK? We've been suffering under the failed austerity project of the Conservative government for 14 years now. The country is completely decimated. Public services are a shadow of their former selves. 1 in 5 people in the UK live in poverty. 4.3 million children are living in poverty, and those numbers are just rising. But we know that the money is there. It simply rests in the wrong place. It is in the bank accounts of the super rich, who gatekeep more money than they will ever need or be able to spend, while the poor get steadily poorer. Since 2010, the combined wealth of the 10 richest people in the UK has increased from 70 billion to 210 billion pounds. They could pay their taxes, reduce their profits, and it would go a long way to solving many problems in this country. And I'd argue that they wouldn't even miss it. There was a time not so long ago when we had some hope. We had an opposition leader who had a vision of a different future through an elected government. But I don't think we have that hope anymore. Some people are still under the illusion that an incoming Labour government will save us, but I don't believe that they will. So our campaigning moving forward has to be aimed at Labour as much as it has to be aimed at the Conservatives. So on to my union, the NEU. We are the largest education union in Europe, and we have nearly 446,000 members. That rose by 50,000 after our strike action last year. Just to briefly paint a picture of education in Britain at the minute, funding in real terms is below the level that it was in 2010. We have a massive recruitment and retention crisis amongst class teachers. The government has missed their teacher training targets for years. A third of teachers leave within 5 years of training. Class sizes are the highest in Europe, with fewer support staff in classes than ever before, meaning teachers are overstretched and children are not receiving the support that they need. We have a crisis in SEND education, with a desperate lack of provision for children with additional needs, a lack of support from external agencies, and specialist interventions from services such as mental health teams taking up to 2 years to be allocated. Schools are poorly resourced, with educators themselves and parents funding essential supplies for schools. Our buildings are crumbling and have been for years. And with a new crisis in the discovery of RAC, hundreds of schools now are not safe for children or staff. We're slowly being taken over by an academy system which sees schools run by trusts as businesses. And these academy trusts do not improve standards for children and certainly do not improve terms and conditions for staff. In fact, many do not recognise unions at all. So as you can see, it is a little bleak in education right now. But in the NEU, we organise, we build, and in the last year, we've taken significant national action. In 2022, we held a ballot on pay and funding, and we beat the incredibly restrictive targets set by the government. We held meetings in branches and schools to ensure that members understood the importance of the vote and why we were balloting. We engaged reps and we asked them to have conversations with all their members, encouraging them to vote. We held phone banking sessions, which were really effective in engaging those members who hadn't voted yet. We were asking for a fully funded, above inflation pay rise after 14 years of real terms pay cuts that leave us with a wage 25% lower in real terms than it was in 2010. Our action began in February last year, and in March, after 2 days of action, the Welsh Government offered 3% to teachers, which was rejected by members, and quickly there came an offer of 5% with a 1.5% non-consolidated lump sum. This was put to Welsh teachers and they settled. But in England, the strike continued and we took 6 more days of action. We had more pickets in more schools than ever before. We had rallies and strike breakfasts and huge national demo in London with 50,000 turning out to demand that teachers got the pay rise that they need. It was a creative, vibrant campaign and we retained the moral high ground throughout. In England, we eventually won a 6.5% pay increase for teacher members. And I say increase as inflation was around 10%. So in reality, it was just another pay cut. Some of us would have liked to continue the fight, but we banked the increase and committed to beginning the battle again this year. Teachers in England still earn significantly less than their colleagues in Scotland, so we're not finished. The funding issue has not been resolved, pay has not been restored, and educators are still leaving the profession in droves, so we fight on. We're in the middle of 2 indicative ballots, one for teachers and one for support staff. For support staff, we're asking them if they would strike alongside the other support unions should they vote for strike action this year. And for teachers, we're asking for a fully funded pay rise. This time, we're asking that that wage begins to restore some of the pay that we've had taken away from us over the years. The government thinks that they're doing a good job with education, and we disagree. We're hopeful that our members are going to tell them this by beating the thresholds again. This ballot takes place under the threat of the introduction of minimum service levels. For education, it would mean around 70% of children would be in school on a strike day. All primary children would be in school. All children with special educational needs would be in school. All children in care or considered vulnerable would be in school. So this means that any strike action would be pointless. Schools would basically still be open. If we put the national disputes to one side and imagine that you have a head teacher who's a bully, who's making staff's lives a misery, policies not being followed and excessive workload is the norm, what will staff be able to do to change that? The introduction of minimum service levels would be a disaster for workers. And for me, our current ballot is about protecting the right to strike for all of us. Strikes to maintain the right to strike is what we all need. So what do we do? Sometimes it's tempting to give up, but we should look to people to inspire us, learn about them and take motivation from people who've had the battle before. How did they do it? How did they make it work? How did they win for workers? And we can look to people like Tom Mann to be that person. He was an English trade unionist fighting this fight in the late 1800s, beginning near my hometown of Birmingham. He was a lifelong advocate of socialism and a successful organiser, active in England and Australia. He was a member of many different political parties and organisations throughout his lifetime, but what ran through those different roles was a fundamental belief that socialism could only be achieved through trade unionism and cooperation, a belief that parliamentary democracy was inherently corrupt. And I think that we can all get on board with that in the UK right now. His outlook on life gave him a firm conviction that the social problem could and would be solved. The more that we build, agitate and galvanise our efforts, the more we demand and organise, the closer we will get to solving those problems that impact so many of us so deeply. So keep working, keep fighting and keep uniting the struggle in solidarity with all workers of the world. Thank you very much.